Hi everyone and welcome to this Keyboard Chronicles live stream. If I'm laughing, it's because I'm going insane and Paul's been very patient with me while we walked through some technical difficulties. How are you, Paul?
I'm good, and just so everyone knows, as David will explain, this is the not live stream. How about
That's
that?
right.
Not live.
Although bizarrely, some of you may be watching a live stream on a different link than we provided. It's a long story, and that's all I'm saying. So mate, it's good to be here. I feel a little bit sad in some ways because in an alternate reality, at one stage we were going to be just probably sitting at a bar in California somewhere having a drink after NAMM's wrapped up, but sadly that didn't come to pass.
No, we both had. Well, you had some things to attend to on the home front, and as it's turned out, I have had an explosion of gigs to get ready for this year. So maybe it's for the best. And it just means that we can keep our powder dry, David, and we will come to a future NAMM.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, fingers crossed, 2026 it happens. So,
Yeah.
but I thought it was still a good opportunity for us to do a bit of a NAM wrap up. I know it's a little bit amusing having two guys on the other side of the world, roughly 16,500 kilometres away or whatever it is. Oh, that's to the UK, but anyway, a long way away. Doing a NAM wrap up, but I think we're both close enough observers and have sort of talked to enough people during the week, both directly and indirectly, to have a bit of a view on some things. So I thought we might jump into some stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And as always, we don't profess to be experts on anything in particular. It's more a case of just having a bit of a discussion, and there might be some things that we talk about that bring up some thoughts and reflections in your own mind. And if they do, and you're watching this on YouTube, you can pop your own thoughts and ideas in the comments
Please.
too. We really welcome that. But yeah, it's more just two fellas who love keyboards reflecting on what's come out at NAMM is what we're doing here. And I reckon we should let's have a challenge here, David. Given that this is a sort of live stream that didn't quite go live, let's try and not have any edits during the show. Let's try and not say anything too stupid as the show progresses, so you don't have to edit anything. There's a challenge.
That's right. No, look, I plan on not doing any edits, so you're right. You're more likely to pull that challenge off than I am
Oh, I don't
because
know
you're a
about that, mate.
professional. But yeah, no, we'll give it a go. So I thought we might start with a bit of a three-way. I shouldn't stop with that. I don't think we should start with a three-way. What we should do is start with a sort of a three-part discussion on big announcements that came out of NAMM in the sort of, what would you call it, the organ stage piano sort of non-workstation sort of field to some extent. So there's one I'm excited about. There's three that we've altogether that we've noted with interest. So I'll start probably with the Roland V stage. So they've announced what some people would be claiming is a Nord killer. But have you had a look, Paul, and what did you think?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. I mean, it seems like a really cool keyboard in the sense of what it can do. But I just wonder, is it a Nord killer? Like, is this? I don't know. Is this what we needed from Roland at this point? Is it? I don't know. Like, what's the value proposition here? What are we getting for? How much bang for buck are we getting? Is it really a Nord killer? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I need to have a closer look at it. But what I am aware of is, I mean, it seems like Roland assumes it's a bit of a potential Nord killer even by the color scheme. But I won't go into that. But yeah,
Yeah.
given they've had such success with both the Phantom and the Phantom O series, I'm not quite sure what niche this is filling, given there are so many other options out there. And I suppose it feels like they're looking for those real rusted on Roland fans.
Yeah, yeah.
And if they're price competitive, and I'll apologise, this is where we don't do the research sometimes. I don't actually know if the pricing is coming in massively under the equivalent Nord, say Nord Stage or Nord Piano.
Yeah.
But unless they're competing on price, I'm not seeing a massive feature set. I suppose you can argue the access to sound banks and stuff are different. Obviously, the layout's slightly different. But yeah, I'm not convinced.
Well, that's sort of my head scratcher with it as well. So if you look at it, it does what any good stage piano does. So it gives you the organs, the pianos, the electric pianos, and it's got a couple of really cool synth engines. But as you just alluded to, David, and this is what I sort of mean when I say I don't quite understand the value proposition, because the Phantom can do all of that and more. And I get that that's a flagship workstation, but again, the pricing, my understanding is it's not that radically different. I mean, the Roland V Stage is a high-end professional product, but yeah, it's hard for me to understand as well what niche it's filling. Maybe I'm wrong, and prices can translate differently in different regions, and we're a global podcast, David, so things can translate differently in different countries. But yeah, it's an interesting one, a bit of a head scratcher. So is it for the rusted on Roland fans? Maybe. I mean, I use Roland stage pianos all the time when I'm touring, and they're great. So no shade on Roland, but yeah, did the market need it? That's my question.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, you made a good point because you do use the sort of the RD series and so on. I mean, because neither of us look too deeply at the actual V piano itself. Again, I'm wondering what the value proposition is there that makes it such a massive upgrade. I mean, obviously the components would be a little bit
Yeah, I mean
more modern.
the engines are wonderful in it. I think that's certainly the feedback. It's high end sounds, and I think if it's like, obviously haven't had a chance to touch it, but if it's like most Roland, it's probably very easy to get around. So Roland, I think, really does a great job when it comes to UI and ease of use. But again, if I already have a Phantom, I'm probably not buying this. You're on mute there, David.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to manage chat at the same time to the thousands of people that are joining us. So,
What's the opinion out there?
look, the opinion out is, look, 100% agreement with what we just said at this stage.
That's nice.
Yeah. So the other one that, before we get on to the elephant in the room, which is Nord themselves, the other one that has totally caught my eye and interest, more on the organ stage, side of things, is the Viscount Legend 1. Now, I've been watching the Viscount stuff. They're both issues and reissues over the last few years, but the Legend one has really stood out for me. So they've released it and announced it, and it's basically available now, which is great.
Yep.
It's 63 and 71 key versions. 61 and 73, let's try. Based on weight, sound, what it can do, it's got a built-in, bit like the YC series with Yamaha, it's got a built-in audio interface. It's got USB MIDI, which I know a lot do now.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting a lot of interest, and its price point, most importantly, is significantly under Nord for, say, the Nord Electro or sort of whatever. Yeah, Nord Electro is probably the most equivalent to some extent. I think I'm going to I've been looking for a second board for a while that really specialises in sort of the organ sounds.
Yes.
And some decent electric pianos and stuff. And from what I'm hearing, it's pretty much nailing all those. And that's from people I trust, people from the musicplayer.com forums and others I've seen online that have actually played with these things at NAMM.
Yes.
They're getting a hell of a rap. I mean, have you had a chance to have a look at a video?
No, I haven't. I mean, I've just seen the wow reviews that it's been getting online, probably like you have. But I wanted to ask you a question. And if our listeners and viewers didn't pick it up, David is seriously thinking of pulling the trigger on one of these. So that's you're probably the perfect person to ask. So what is it? Why this board? So what's really getting you excited about wanting to potentially purchase it?
It's partly the authenticity of the sound. And I mean, I play in a cover band. I mean, I'm not expecting anyone standing in the audience in our 80s cover band trying to pick out whether I'm playing an authentic Hammond B3 sound. I'm not delusional. But for me, playing through in-ears and I need to like the sound of what I'm playing as well. So the reason I'm looking at it is it's fully digitally compatible, so I can still use it with a main stage rig. It's quite light. It's a sort of like the YC series. Paul's been kind in talking about me buying things. I tend to buy things, get excited about them, then sell them really quickly when I realise it's not quite the fit. So I'm the guy that stupidly, in retrospect, sold his Yamaha YC61, although to a good friend. So I was pleased to give her a good price and see it go to a good home, and I see it regularly at gigs. So that's a good thing. So I was sort of tossing around about stupidly buying a YC73 because I sold my 61. The Viscount Legend one's come out, and I'm thinking, no, this looks even tastier, and it's just a little bit different.
Yeah, well, indeed, it's not the standard Yamaha Roland Korg sort of thing. And look, it does seem to be getting great reactions and reviews from initial first impressions and that sort of thing. Interesting about the Yamaha YC though, I think I mentioned this previously, maybe on here on our show, maybe not, David. I know we've chatted about it. I got the chance to use a YC 88 touring,
Ah,
and I thought it was great. I really liked it, and I'm not really a Yamaha guy, and that's because I don't get along with Yamaha UIs very well, but not because I inherently dislike them. And it was great. I didn't have a lot of time to play with it because I hired it to gig live, but I loved what it sounded like. It felt good, looked good, responded well. So, but where I'm sort of ultimately going with this is Yamaha gave us a bit of a yawn at NAMM, didn't they, David?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, look, I hadn't actually thought of that, but that's a really good point. Yeah, what did they, if anything, announce?
Nothing that really caught my attention. Yamaha's a big company. Maybe they brought out a motorbike or something. I don't know, but I didn't notice anything big in the keyboard slash synth world.
No, and I mean, I know they've had a big 12. I mean, they released the Montage M series and
Yeah.
they've done a few other, I mean, the YC stuff, the CK series. Like, they've had a big year. But yeah, I assume they're,
Leave
yeah,
pass. Brought out these other things. Maybe we just give.
yeah, and I don't know how many NAM veterans we'd have listen. I'm not sure with that sort of live stream, but having been there once and I've seen comments too, I know some manufacturers in some years don't necessarily have big presences on the floors, but have sort of industry, like they'll book out a suite of rooms, or a conference room at a hotel nearby, that sort of thing, and really target media and industry professionals rather than the public or
Yeah,
the smaller. I mean, NAM is meant to be for industry professionals anyway, but they've
that's
loosened
right.
the reins a lot over recent years, and it isn't that hard to be able to go and check it out. So, no, good point about the Yawn
Do,
Fest with
do we qualify
Yamaha.
as both media and industry professionals, or?
That is a long story, including visas that I'll explain to you sometime. It's a difficult situation, but yeah. So that's the Viscount. The Australian pricing for the 61 key is around the $3,200 mark. So in US dollars, I actually haven't looked at the US retail, but that's roughly 1800 US,
Yeah, yeah.
or slightly under actually, probably more like 1600 with the current exchange rate. So to me, that's a great price point. Most of your Nords are starting at sort of 3900, going up to 8,000 Australian dollars. So it's, that's the third one. So we've got the Nord Organ 3 and the Nord Piano 2. I hope I've got that numbering right, but they're sort of in the lead up to NAM, and then obviously demoed them during NAM. They're red. They've had improvements beyond that. Any thoughts?
Well, the one that caught caught my eye with the Nord. I'll stay away from the organ. I didn't really get much of a chance
Yeah.
to look at that, so maybe you can talk to that one a little bit, David. But the new Grand 2, my understanding is that's got a whiz bang super duper amazing action. So I believe the action's been completely retooled, and they've gone into partnership with Kawai to come up with something to really give you that authentic, proper piano feel. And I guess weighted actions are subjective, and we've all got our preferences, what we like, and you tend to get used to the action that you prefer. But I think that's a cool idea, and Nord's Nord, right? What are you going to get? Like you said, it'll be red, and it'll be super, super, super high quality. And the other thing you'll get with Nord is, yes, it will be expensive to buy, but your resale value will also be very good too.
Yes.
So they're not cheap instruments, but I guess there's a reason for that. They are high quality.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as an aside, everyone too, I'm still trying to sell my Nord Electro 6D 73 key hammer piano action that I bought recently. So drop me a line if you're local. Yeah, so the Nord Organ 3 is a dual combo, like a two manual combo organ, 261 key manuals. I do actually like the look of it. It's got more black than red, which is in its personal preference.
You can always spray paint it, mate.
Yeah, you can always spray paint it. So now, look, I think, but it's 4,000 US. and that's obviously not an insignificant expense for those outside the US, let alone in the US. But no, they keep iterating, and there's no doubt they're one of the leaders in the field. And I think the YC series and things like the Viscount stuff is really putting challenges to them, which should only make them continue to iterate and improve.
Well, and who wins, right? The consumer. I mean, if all these brands are trying to bring out a real high quality instrument, that's a great thing for us who love to purchase and play with keyboards. So
Exactly.
Long may it continue.
Exactly. So yeah, that's those. And the other one that got me a bit excited ever since I was a little teenager, showing my age, back in the 80s, going to driving 100 kilometres to the nearest town to see where there was a keyboard magazine on the shelf. Kurzweils have always fascinated me. The K2000 back in those days, would have dreamt of having one of those. They've obviously released the K2700. Could be probably 3 years ago now, I'm guessing, be around there. They announced the K206 one and the K2088, which are based on the K2000s. I mean, I've always had an issue with their numbering systems, but anyway, it sort of makes sense. Have you checked them out at all, Paul?
Yeah, so I've got a question, and again, this could just be my ignorance. So I'm really happy to get some feedback around this. But what's new? I'm just not understanding what's new. So it's still got a fiddly small screen, maybe a little bit bigger than those old Kurzweils, but not much. It's still got Vast, which we know is super powerful, but also you need to have some real what's the word I'm looking for? Some intestinal fortitude to really want to dig into that and learn it, because it's not the easiest. I guess like a lot of powerful things, there's some real complexity there to programming Vast. I think it's got a FATAR keyboard in it, and it's not. I don't think it's cheap either. I think it's on the higher end of things, but it's not giving you. It's not. I see it as more like an MODX than maybe a montage, if I'm using a Yamaha analogy. So, yeah, that's just my question. I'm just wondering what's new. I don't know. Maybe I've missed something there. I don't know.
No, I don't think you missed much. I mean, it is very much based on the Vast architecture. Obviously, the components and the screen have been improved as far as resolution and all that. I mean, obviously, the K2000 would have been released. We're talking 80s anyway. Sorry, I'm not sure exact year. Look, Vast does put some people off. I mean, I'll give a bit of a heads up that we might have a bit of a Kurzweil guru coming on the show in the next,
nice.
Where are we, 6 to 8 weeks. So this is something we'll definitely ask them.
Yeah, and I know who that is, and he will be well qualified to smack me down and say and I'm sure it had the architecture of it is much better, and it probably sounds a lot better.
But I know people that use Kurzweils swear by them as far as they love the quality of the sounds. I mean, these new ones have over sort of 2,000 programs and 500 combis or multi combinations as they call them.
Yeah.
Having a quick browse through too. So I mean, obviously it got 2 gig of factory sounds. I'm not even going to go down the rabbit hole. 2 gig doesn't sound like much. It still drives me insane across all manufacturers that they're not releasing keyboards that have 200-300 gig of memory, not 2 gig. It's insane. How much is it? Like, you can't even buy a 2 gigabyte thumb drive. And I understand it's SSD. I understand it's different, but just really, how much money are you saving?
Well, that's right. Memory is so much cheaper than it used to be now, so that is a bit of a head scratcher. And look, to your point, again, 'cause I don't ever like to come across like I'm bashing a brand or anything like that. I mean, these are all professional quality instruments, but I just think it's good to challenge and ask these questions. But
absolutely.
Getting back to your point about some people absolutely swear by Kurzweil, and I think of Ruben Valtierra, who we had on our show, and he's, for those who haven't seen that episode, he's Weird Al Yankovic's keyboard player, and I can't remember the exact way he described it, but he basically said that as far as he's concerned, Kurzweil's the be-all and the end-all, and he wouldn't be without it. So he's
that's exactly
big
right.
advocate. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I mean, the thing that's turned me out, I would have probably bought the K2700 ages ago, except it weighs a ton. And this is an issue, as you know, everyone knows, if you want a really decent keyboard and you've got to pay for it. But I mean, the K2061, one of the reasons it's caught my attention, still not super light, but it's 11.92 kilos or 26 pounds.
That's not too bad.
Now, compared to a Modi X from memory is at 8 or 9 kilos, so it's only a few, 2-3 kilos heavier than that. As you know, 11.92 kilos is not hard to lift. That's fine. So that's the other reason. I'm just tempted because I've always wanted a Kurzweil. I'm thinking a Kurzweil on the bottom and a Viscount Legend one on the top.
There you go.
Change my whole bloody rig.
There you go. Well, can you make us a promise, David? If you do buy one or both of those keyboards, please let's circle back to this chat, and we'd love to hear your users' review. What do you think of them? How do they operate?
That's right. If I sell the Electro 6D, I might be able to buy one of them. So we'll see. I've run out of other things to sell. So yeah, that's Kurzweil. I got to say more broadly, I'm excited to see them continuing to put out stuff because they are. I know they're the big three of Korg, Roland, and Yamaha, but there are so many other great companies around, and Kurzweil is one of those ones with huge longevity, and they take a slightly different approach. And I love it from that viewpoint. So that's that one, and then look. I don't know about you, Paul, but on Facebook, I am bombarded by Rolly ads. I just get. It's because obviously we have the Keyboard Chronicles page. So if I'm ever on that page, all I see is Rolly stuff, but for good reason. And tell us a little bit what you've seen about their release that they had at NAMM.
Yeah, so they've got this very interesting idea, which is they call it the piano system, I think, and they're using technology as a teaching aid. And my understanding, based on what I've been able to see with this Rolly piano system, is that you've got a 49 key bed, which I believe can be modularized to add to other key beds to make it longer, bigger, if you want to. And it's got light up keys. So that's a cool idea, and and then it's got a camera in it as well. And they're also intending to leverage the power of AI. So you add all of those things together, and you can do things like you can have let's call it a live video chat with your piano teacher, who, via use of two cameras, they can play, and then your keyboard will show you what they've played. The keys are lighting up. You're copying what your teacher's done. So it's quite. The stuff I've read was a little bit non-specific on exactly how it works, and I think probably because we're possibly not at full release stage yet with some of this technology, but it's a very fascinating idea. And if you throw in the idea of AI as well, the ability to leverage that to help create and help teach, and apparently can do things like you can track your hand. So instead of having a fixed split point in the keyboard, if it knows where your right hand is, it will just move that sound to where your right hand is, even if it crosses over your left hand. So crazy stuff, right? Really crazy stuff. But I just like the idea of it. But to simplify it, it's a light-up keyboard with a camera, which is a teaching aid.
That's amazing. And can I just say, the floating split stuff, which I know some of the big manufacturers have sort of partially implemented, but if that ends up being really fluid and useful, who's not buying a Korg, Yamaha, Roland, Kurzweil, whatever it is, workstation or synth that does that? I'm picking that up tomorrow.
Well, yeah, if your keyboard had the intelligence to know when you needed the split and when you didn't, and to allow that split to be flexible across the keyboard depending on what your hand is playing, I mean, that's so useful, right? So incredibly useful. And I don't think beyond the realms of possibility when you think of what the pace of technological advancement with AI now.
You've got to remember the keyboard companies are only giving you 2 gig of sample memory, so they're still in 2009. But it's, I think it would be really useful. I mean, we've all been there as players. I know there's one song, I can't actually recall what it is, but there's one song I play in my band where the split, only due to necessity, means that one note is in a different sound that ideally I would be playing, but I go down the octave for that last note. Oh, I know what it is. It's Call Me by Blondie. There's one note I would like to play, but because I have, I think, 3 splits across the keyboard, I can't make it work any other way. And it drives me balmy. It's like where it was something like that. It knows that when you're doing that keyboard solo, that it keeps that note. I'm buying one of them tomorrow.
Yeah, I have a similar challenge, similar but different. With a couple of the songs I play in various cover acts, because I'd use 61 key keyboards mainly, I run out of real estate, so I'm having to pitch shift things I'm playing to fit them on the keyboard real estate wise. So I'm playing on my left hand in one key and my right hand in a completely different key just to. And if I had perfect pitch, my brain would explode trying to do that. Luckily, I don't, so it's not. It's just all muscle memory, but it's very weird, right? And you shouldn't have to do things like that. So this would definitely help solve issues like that if you could just flex those split points a little bit.
Yeah, no, and a big welcome to those that join. We've got a few people watching, so we're going to get on to the one where I think if you and I ever fought, and I think we've said this before, I don't think we've ever had a fight in our lives.
Never had a fight. Never.
But this might be the time. So let's talk about the new Korg Kronos.
So,
so you tell us first, because I know you're quite legitimately excited. Tell us about the Kronos announcement.
You know what? I don't reckon we are going to be fighting here, but we'll just see. So this is true, folks. David and I have not discussed. All we said before was we're going to talk about the new Korg Kronos. So there's no. David doesn't know what I'm about to say, and I don't know what he's about to say. But I'll start, and I think he's giving me the lead here because I'm a Korg user primarily and exclusively, pretty much with all my bands.
And just on that, Paul, too, I do have a minor piece of credibility in that I did own a Korg Kronos.
You did.
LS88, and I gigged with it a couple of times, and I loved it. Yeah. I absolutely loved it, except it weighed a ton. But back to you.
Hey, hang on, let me tell the viewers a story and the listeners a story. Only very few of you will know this. How David and I became very good friends is I knew David via the music player forums, and only very casually. He was just a bloke who had a handle, and I knew he was Australian, and that was about it. He seemed like a nice guy. We weren't exactly best mates or anything. And I did a corporate gig, and they provided me with a Kronos as the backline keyboard, which I'd never used one before. And I thought, that's okay. So I went to the local music shop and I got myself familiar with the way it worked, which wasn't hard because I've been a long time Korg user, so I adapted to that pretty well. Got myself familiar with the quirks, worked out how I could quickly go over to interstate and use this Kronos. But when I went to use it, the piano samples wouldn't load, and so half my patches weren't working, and I was having a meltdown. And on a whim, I contacted David, and he responded straight away with a photograph out of the manual. So that was his version of RTFM. Here you go, Paul, read this. I read it, and problem solved. A gig went very well, and all were happy. So that's how David and I kind of got really good friends. Yeah. So David has much more Kronos expertise than me, but I'm a big Korg user and advocate. So honest self-declaration.
And a Nautilus owner now, yeah. So, I mean, tell us what you think of, I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone was necessarily expecting, everyone had sort of assumed that there might be a Kronos 3, but it still seemed to come out of nowhere to some extent.
I was shocked by it. I thought they'd given up on it, to be honest. But here's my opinion. So it's a bit of a ho-hum. That's my opinion. It's kind of, look, the Kronos and the Kronos 2 were wonderful machines, but they're not new. And this isn't that different. Just to your comment on memory, we do have 62 gigabytes of sample size on the machine, so that's a positive. That's a big increase. It has got a heap of new sounds. I think they threw another 256 different sounds, more modern, can I call them, sounds on the machine. But I'm starting to run out of things that are that much different about it, to be honest. I think the boot time's quicker.
Yeah.
Anyone who's used a Kronos knows how horribly long and I use a Nautilus, and it's no different. The boot time is shockingly bad. So they claim, I think, that the boot time is 60% faster, which isn't a bad thing. I always say, though, like, you only boot the machine once, so, who really cares? But anyway, that's just my opinion. But yeah, I don't know, David. What do you think? I was a little bit underwhelmed.
Yeah, so damn no fight yet then. Yeah, look, I was a bit excited because I thought if there was something truly groundbreaking, I did love my LS88. The issue that I seem to have a bad history in buying keyboards for the wrong reasons. I loved it. I had lost a job and had a small payout, and I chose to spend it on the Korg Kronos LS88. And I demoed it before, loved it. You can't fault the sounds, it was amazing. And I decided to put up with I don't think it's quite 40 kilos, but it's like 35, whatever it is. It's a stupid weight. And by the time you add a case into it or whatever, gig with it a couple of times, and it was a hell of a hassle to get in and set up. And it was
nearly
yeah, that's right.
That was the light
it
version.
was the light version, and it was nearly a two-person lift, not quite, but I was able to manage it. But it was just sitting at home, and I ended up selling it. But look, you can't fault the build. The sounds are beautiful. One thing I've never understood, I know some people love the Korg organs. They've never spoken to me in any way, shape, or form. Don't know why. And I also hated the joystick rather than the mod wheel and pitch bend wheels.
Oh,
But
I
that's just
love the joystick.
yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people do. I know it's just a
Yeah, I
personal
love it.
preference. So yeah, but you're right. Between the different, aside from the memory, the screen, I think the screen is more responsive. As they're saying it's an easier to use. You definitely like some people used to use styluses and stuff to try and make it a little bit easier. I know you had to press quite hard. It's
Yeah,
apparently
right.
more responsive screen, which you'd hope, given it's 13 years old or whatever the
Yeah.
current the original
I,
Kronos.
I don't know. Maybe one of our listeners, viewers might know. Maybe you know, David. Is it the same screen as the one that's on the Nautilus? Because that's quite good. That's
Oh,
very
so it
good.
could be, yeah, good point.
Mm.
And I know our good friend Francis Capistrano, who's the guy behind NAV Sounds. I know he made it from Australia across to NAMM and has
He
had
did.
a ball of a time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure Francis has views because he's a big core guy and I know he uses Chronoses.
Oh, he's a genuine power
Yeah,
user. He's forgotten more about Korgs than I'll ever know. That bloke.
that's right. So yeah, I'm really interested in his thoughts
Mm.
as well. So yeah, that's the Kronos. So no fight because all I was going to say is yeah, it just doesn't innovate enough. I think it feels like they just felt the need to play some sort of catch up with the Phantoms and the montages
It's a
and
bit sad, isn't it? Because when the Oasis come out, it was like this is the most groundbreaking thing ever, incredible. And then the Kronos was also an amazing sort of thing, and it became the standard, I think, for a lot of professional keyboard players everywhere. And there are still plenty who swear by it, even though it's
yeah.
very old now. And so, I don't know, you whack the name Kronos on something and say it's number three. I don't know. I was hoping for that, and I think it was just more like that. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see whether it's sort of a placeholder for, in quotation marks, a Kronos 4 that is totally different beast. But although you can't expect totally different too. I mean, even the montages are iterations from the Moxifs and, it's all that sort of stuff.
Mm, mm,
We shall see. But yeah, I think there's divided opinion over the Kronos.
mm.
And I mean, speaking of divided opinions, I don't think there's a manufacturer that divides opinions more than Behringer. So Behringer have had a big show, albeit with prototypes that aren't released yet. But let's talk about the big one that stood out for me, which was the BX1, Paul.
Mm.
So you and I, well, you were more of a DX owner in the original phase. I've owned a DX7 more recently. I had a Yamaha non-DX model back in the 80s. The DX1 was obviously out of all of our reach back then. There was no way any of us were buying DX1s.
David, let me say this. I owned a DX9 back in the day,
Yeah.
and that's because I could not afford a DX7, which was the cool keyboard. And for those out there who are not familiar with the DX9, imagine a DX7 that was just nowhere near as good. That's
Right.
what
And
it was.
I think I could beat you, Paul, because I owned probably as late teens or early 20s the DX100, which I think is probably the DX9 with the mini keys. It was, it was awful. It was absolutely
But you
awful.
know what? It said Yamaha DX on it, and that's all it needed to have, right?
That's right. And that's one of the reasons I bought the Mo DX7 because it had the letters DX7. Obviously, it does have a DX7 in it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, the DX1 was obviously an enormous, very few people would have had them. So they've essentially mashed that and the iconic Yamaha CS80 into
Yeah.
one synthesizer. So I haven't actually watched a lot of the sound videos, and given it's still at prototype stage, isn't it? So I haven't really listened to a lot of it. But yeah, any initial thoughts?
Well, excitement. I just think it's cool, and yeah, I don't know that I really want to enter into um, the philosophical world of Behringer and where we stand around. Are we doing a great thing and bringing those classic keyboards back to life at an affordable price, or are we plagiarising? I don't really want to go there, but I would just say if you could have told me when I was a young bloke I could have a DX1 and a and a CS80 combined into one keyboard and I'd be able to afford it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Start the car. I'll have one.
That's right. No, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. I know they're not expecting it to be released until 2026. I think they're fairly clear on that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
while we're talking, I look up the weight. I know I'm very weight concerned, but I mean, I worry about how much does that thing weigh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair.
But beyond that, yeah, look, I like the look of it, and yeah, the Behringer philosophical stuff. It's a risk of sounding like I'm sitting on the fence. I am sitting on the fence. I don't have any sort of skin in that game. I saw someone post today that it really does. It's people like Behringer that try and keep the big guys a bit more honest because they're gouging. The claim of this person is they're gouging massive profits with not a lot of innovation, and you could argue some of what we've talked about tonight is very snail's pace innovation, and that you need people like Behringer to do this stuff to drive them to do a little bit better as far as price and performance.
Yeah, and I'm like you. I'm not necessarily fence sitting either. I'm just not strongly opinionated on it. It's and I guess if you want to really dig into the weeds with this stuff, you ask questions about the supply chain and what happens there. And but I mean, I think this is a bit above my intellectual pay grade.
Yeah.
I just tend to say, well, look, it's a cool idea. Look, honestly, I wouldn't get one now. At this stage of my life and music career, and like you, if it's not really lightweight, I'm not interested in it because of all the travel and all the rest of it, and getting things on and off planes. But honestly, I think it's a cool idea, and I think, like I said, Dex 1 CS80, yes please, there'll be a market for that, surely.
Yeah.
Surely.
And what were the other two prototypes, Paul? I know you've noted those, and I'm aware broadly of them.
Yeah, so there again, I don't think these were working models, but I believe they were getting everyone excited about a Jupiter 8 and a Prophet 5 clone. So they're calling, I've got to refer to my notes, they're calling the Jupiter 8, so they're 16 voice machines. So the Jupiter 8's the JT 16 and the Prophet 5 is the Pro 16. So they've pretty easy to remember, really, when you think about it like that. So again, this is what Behringer do. They take these classic synthesizers and come up with a very, very nice sounding, I assume, they have been up till now, a very nice sounding modern version of it that with an old school feel that's as great for the people who want to access those classic sounds but don't want to mortgage their house.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just having a quick look to see if I can see a weight. Because it's a prototype, I don't think they've actually published a weight, and they may not have a final weight given they'll be still fiddling around with stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, look, it is all very interesting. And the other one that caught my eye, and I've nearly, in my quest for a MIDI controller, and I recently, last 3 or 4 months, upgraded my Arturia Keylab Mark 2 to a Mark 3, which I love to bits, although it's been causing some rig issues, but that's my issue, not Arturia's. But the other one I nearly pulled the trigger on at the time I was upgraded the Arturia was the Studio Logic MIDI controllers, and they released the Studio Logic SL Mark IIs. They're really nice keyboards. I'm not going to go too much into depth, but except to say that if you are looking for a MIDI controller, yes, there's the Native Instruments controllers, there's the Arturia controllers, there's obviously a lot of other. I mean, you've got Novation, you've got M Audio, and so on, but I just like the look, and I've heard the feel of the Studio Logic ones are great, and I'm going to investigate a little bit more, but I'm really not in the market for a MIDI controller at the moment.
Yeah, well, I'm not a MIDI guy, as you know, David. I'm sort of hardware only. But that being said, we've talked about this before. I think MIDI controllers are becoming more and more important in the modern gigging musician's setup, and I suppose that the two factors you're looking for are, one, a great action, and two, great control surfaces. And I guess whoever can tick that box is probably going to be the one that's successful. I know you were saying you love your Arturia.
Yeah. Look, it's just a really solid build. The keys feel great. I'm having some technical issues between it and Mainstage that are driving me a little bit mad, but I'm pretty sure it's not the controller's issue. It's actually my setup in Mainstage. So
that's another live stream discussion.
Oh, is it ever?
I reckon you and I could have a really good hardware versus software chat.
Well, and that's why I'm looking at things like the Viscount Ledger one. I honestly am looking at getting away, even though Mainstage, if done properly, can be highly, highly reliable, and I know there are international acts that use it all the time. I'm now at the stage, I would rather just use it as a MIDI switcher, and there are better ways of doing that via an iPad, but just basically having my laptop and it telling two keyboards with onboard sound switch to this patch. I've gotten to the stage I just don't need the stress of it, but that's on me, not on the
Yeah, it's
tech.
horses for courses too, I think. Some people would say that there's more stress in having to deal with hardware and the various issues that you get with that too. I watched a band here in Adelaide on Saturday night, just gone, a really excellent band, and they had two keyboard players, and one was using, as best as I could tell, one was using hardware, the other one was using Mainstage or a version or something similar. And it all sounded good, and it all worked.
Right.
So they didn't have any technical problems, so it was all good.
Yeah, and it's lovely when it all works. I'm proud of the fact my rig has both, and when it works beautifully. But just every night, you're not totally convinced until it's actually working. But anyway, we'll see.
I'm not totally convinced of my playing ability every night, so I'll just throw that in the same bundle.
You're not wrong on that one.
What's going to happen here?
I'm hearing you. So yeah, that's the Studio Logic, and the only honourable mention I wanted to give was to the Melbourne Instruments, are an Australia-based company who've released these amazing synthesizer, the Delia, and I've forgotten the name of the other one. Very boutique, very high-priced, basically handmade instruments. I noticed they at NAMM released their Roto Control, which is this beautiful looking. It's motorized controllers, and it's a beautiful. It's sort of a long, thin unit to do, basically as a MIDI switcher or a MIDI controller to control a keyboard rig without needing a computer. So basically it sends MIDI code to, whatever you want it to do. Looks really nice, but I think I don't have any argument for it. It was just an honourable mention to a great boutique company, and there are so many of them. For those that haven't been to NAMM, and just broadly too, Paul, on NAMM, I certainly had the vibe talking to a few people that were there and just the general slew of announcements. This is the closest it's been to a normal NAMM since, I was there in 2020, at the start of 2020, just before COVID hit with a vengeance. And that was basically a normal NAMM. This, it feels like, is the first normal one since then. They obviously had... there was an online one, I think, one year, and then they changed the dates, and they slowly moved the dates back to January, and still in Anaheim. So if you do get the chance, I know it's not easy to travel, and it's certainly not cheap to travel, but if you do get the chance, it feels like January 2026 should be a good show, assuming, nothing changes in the meantime.
Yeah. I read similar things about it, David, and again, you and I chat to some of the same people, and so the feeling was it was a bit like the good old-fashioned NAMM with plenty going on, which is good. And I see Mike's just popped the... Thanks for joining us and commenting, Mike. I've had some epic fails at Mainstage. Yeah, well, that's right. Epic fails can happen, but like I said, I'm an exclusively hardware user. I could give you a list of epic fails like that. So. Yeah,
it's interesting, Mike. It's a valid point, and I've definitely had some epic fails with Mainstage. Funnily enough, I played a New Year's Eve gig. It was a great gig with great people. Loved the band I'm in, and also the band. We it was a double header, and we also did a joint performance of the iconic Rock Lobster. Because for those of you that are in the Northern Hemisphere, it's a damn hot time of year. So it was a beach party theme. It's middle of summer here, so we played Rock Lobster. But anyway, nothing to do with Rock Lobster. One of the songs we play is "It's My Life" by Bon Jovi. I'm using a Modi X7 with onboard sounds and samples. Works perfectly. It's got that beautiful do in "It's My Life." I switched to it on the night. It's not there. The sample's gone, and it's a NARF sound sample. And I am in no way blaming NARF sounds. It's obviously an issue with my keyboard, not the samples, because it's there. I've been able to locate it again since, so it's not that I've done something wrong. But it just shows you, as you said, whether it's Mainstage or a hardware rig, I couldn't believe it. We just counted in, and I went, it's not there. So I switched to just a piano sound. You can do without it. That's fine. The punters didn't realise, whatever. But yes, you're absolutely right.
The great thing about being a keyboard player, everyone, is no one's really listening to you anyway. So you can have an amazing fail and it'll be fine. Here's... Augustus from Scotland. Thank you so much. we're loving the fact you joined us.
Welcome, Augustus. Now, if this is, I was going to say, this is the lovely Augustus from Augustus Broadford. Sorry, I hope you don't mind me mentioning your name, Augustus, but you constantly comment on the videos and it's hugely appreciated. So lovely to have you on board. Welcome. And just one quick thing about Rock Lobster too. Some of you out there may have already played it. I was a little bit, not intimidated because it's not that difficult, but there's a fair bit in that song for all the instruments. Super simple for keyboard.
The keys is easy.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why. I just thought, there's lots of bits in there, and I wasn't worried it was going to be a virtuoso piece by any stretch. But yeah, I think it took me an hour to learn it.
It's the perfect song because it's a banger. It's such a good song, and the keys parts are quite noticeable and iconic, and they're really easy. So it's like it just ticks all the boxes, and you only have to play for about the first half of the song too. So
that's right.
You can dance for the rest of it. That's what I do. I just do a bit of that for the second half.
Yeah, that's right. And just one last NAMM thing for those that might be thinking about attending next year or whenever you go. People, you don't even really get a sense of the scope of NAMM, even from the videos of people from there. And I'm sure people like Francis or anyone else that's been all will vouch for this, that it's huge. I don't know how to put it anymore. It's multi-story. One of the floors alone has got a few hundred indie developers. The main floors are enormous. If you ever ask anyone for advice on going to NAMM, one of the first things they'll always say is wear comfortable shoes. And they're not joking. The amount of walking you will do is insane. I think it's something like 10,000. 10,000 exhibitors seems too high. But anyway, it's you can't grasp the scope of it until you've been there. And it is one of those, without bringing religion into things, it's nearly a religious experience for a musician. And obviously, it's not just for keyboard players. So you've got whole areas for drums and guitars and bass and orchestral instruments and software, pro audio, you name it. Pro audio's in a whole separate hall. So it's insane. So highly recommended. And hi, Mike. So we've got someone from... thank you, Paul. You've already applied from the UK. So this is probably the best time for our UK listeners rather than our US and Canadian listeners. And apologies for that. I know it's an insane early time of morning for those. So we were never expecting that. But we need to share the love. And we certainly have a lot of great listeners from the UK.
And this chat will end up posting this chat on our channels, so there'll be no issues. Everyone will get to have a listen to us, which may or may not be a good thing, David, depending on your view of our dribbling.
Well, just while I'm rabbiting on too, obviously this is the peak time for US and UK artists to come out to Australia to avoid some of that winter weather. I mean, just in the last 2 weeks, I've been to see 2 great gigs. One that featured a former guest on the podcast. So I went and saw Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats. And Mark Schusterman came on the show last year. Just an amazing band. If you're not aware of Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, you do need to check them out there. It's just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like Americana, soulful rock. It's amazing. And the other one, and this one's thanks to you, Paul, that just last Thursday night I went and saw Lawrence. Which, for those unaware, Lawrence are a band primarily consisting of a brother and sister, so Clyde and Gracie Lawrence. Amazing musicians and singers, but they're obviously part of a much bigger band. I wanted to call that out particularly because it was very encouraging. My wife and I went. It's safe to say the venue was probably, I'm not sure how many the Metro stands. It's not a seated venue, but it's at least 12 to 1,400. It'd be around there anyway. They sold out 2 nights in a row. They're obviously from the US. It was a heaving, sweaty mess of people. We couldn't even get into the main part of the venue. There's sort of a walkway that leads up and you get a beautiful view of the stage, but you're actually not in the main venue. We were happy to stand there. 95% of the audience were under the age of 35 and probably 70% were under the age of probably 28.
That wouldn't surprise me.
And Clyde and Gracie themselves are sort of late 20s, early 30s. What I loved is the fact that this was a couple of thousand people over a couple of nights who were loving funky, well-executed music in a style that people our age, Paul, are very much used to and just, loving it. An amusing anecdote too, the support act, who was amazing. They were a local support act whose name just escapes me at the moment, but they were absolutely brilliant. They had a sax player. And I had to laugh every time the sax player stepped forward to the front of the stage and did a solo. The crowd went bananas. Absolutely went bananas. And it was like, I think to some of them was the novelty of it, but they just appreciated a good sax solo. And my wife and I said, if only they were here in the 70s and the 80s where every second song had a sax solo.
Yeah, that's what I love about, and obviously I didn't see the support act because I wasn't there. I wasn't privileged to be there and watch it. But Lawrence have that real old school sound about them. They lean heavily on vintage sounds, and they've got that real vintage sort of sensibility about their song structures and style. Although they're a very young band and have a lot of, as David just said, a lot of young followers. So for all listening and watching, Lawrence, Lawrence. I just think they're a wonderful band.
And I don't want to jinx it, but obviously I did try once to get Clyde Lawrence on the show and sent it through to what was his then management. I I found out that he had a Gmail address on his website, sent an email basically saying, look, great show, we'd still love to have you on our show. And his management team came back on Saturday to say, yeah, let's do this. Now, that doesn't necessarily translate into an appearance, but for those of you listening to the live stream, I think Clyde will be on sometime in, the next 6 to 8 weeks. And he's not the Kurzweil expert I talked about before. He was playing, I think he just had a good old Nord stage. I think he was just playing. That was all he had and did an amazing job with it.
He generally has a pretty simple setup at live shows, but he's a great player and a great singer too.
Yeah, so superb singer.
He's a really talented young man, and if we can get him on the show, it would be amazing. And then the second thing that has to happen, David, is I have to not be gigging that time so that I can actually be part of the interview.
Yes, we'll make sure you are. That's right. And as Paul's aware, but I'm definitely not going to jinx it by mentioning this one, but there are a couple of other really, really notable guests that one of them's been at least a year in the making that are still toing and froing with us, that there is a potential for them to appear. I know that's a bit like, what do you call it, vague booking or, just not giving any information, but there's some really wonderful guests we've got coming up. But
we've got some big names. Yeah. But it's always the way until it's locked in. And obviously the bigger the name, the more busy they are, and the trickier it can be to match schedules. But we're very, very excited. So hopefully it doesn't turn out like the Fire Festival, David. Hopefully there is actually an
Well, speaking of festivals, I may be going to a festival later this year because for those, most people won't be aware, but today we published our latest episode of the podcast, episode 135, which was with Mike McKnight. Now, we're always going to say you need to check out an episode because we're yet to have a bad guest, and I honestly mean that. Every guest has been brilliant and had great insights in their own way. So, but Mike's insights, he's I think it's fair to say, a very forthright gentleman. He says what he thinks and he says it forcefully. And there's some absolute gold anecdotes in there. I can't, whether it's about Madonna, Mariah Carey, Roger Waters, U2, the U2 one in particular is well worth listening to, but they're all brilliant. He has worked with everyone that is anyone. And I do recommend checking that out. But yeah, so Mike is touring with Mariah Carey later in the year, and I've promised to buy him a beer, and he's keen to receive said beer. So fingers crossed.
I love that. Keen to receive said beer. That sounds sounds like most people we know from Australia and the UK. Isn't that right, David? We would like to.
That's right. And Jerry, great to see you too. I know Paul responded. Yes, so definitely not your fault, mate. It was our technical issue. No, so otherwise, I think, we anything else from you, Paul? I think we've sort of been at it nearly an hour. I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah, it's probably time to give everyone a rest from our dulcet tones, I would have thought. No, nothing really other than to say it's been a pleasure just reviewing NAMM from afar, from the other side of the globe. And I love the fact that there have been a lot of interesting things to talk about, and it feels like maybe we're finally coming out the other side of it. It's hard, right? The world is still economically struggling for lots of reasons. And a lot of people are doing it tough out there with cost of living in all over the world, our country, but in other countries too. And it's a time of great change and upheaval everywhere. But I sort of feel like maybe we're leaving some of the real shock we had off the back of COVID behind us, and and
Yeah.
we're starting to get back into the things we love doing. And for a lot of us, for a lot of us here in this moment, that's playing keyboards and loving music and sharing it. So it's been nice to be in this privileged position to talk about it for a while, especially with you, David.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you, sir. And yeah, cheers to you, Mike. Thanks for the cheers emoji. That's brilliant. And look, yeah,
Perfect, Mike.
and you never know with this age of innovation and AI, we might actually get 12 gig of sample memory by 2029. You never know. So, yeah, no, look, I can't thank you all enough for listening. We do appreciate it. And so we'll be back with another live stream in the next few months. Paul, you've got one hell of a year ahead of you. So, I mean, I think we only managed anyway 3 or 4 live streams. That's about the cadence of it. We're certainly not a professional live streaming organisation. Our skills are elsewhere, but we'll definitely be back.
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoyed the live streams. It's nice to have a free form chat, and for David and I, who do live 1,000 miles apart, literally, it's an excuse for us to catch up and have a good old chat to each other as well. But yeah, we'll do a few of those, and I have got a super hectic schedule this year. That's not a bad thing, but I'll certainly try and be with you as much as I can this year.
No, excellent. No, so thank you all for listening, and thanks to Mike and Dewey and Augustus and everyone else that if I've missed anyone, I'll end the stream now, or maybe I won't and you'll hear me swearing after the thing. For those of you that have joined us on the Riverside link, you will still hear us, but I think on YouTube, we'll end about now. There you go. The stream's finished. So I'm assuming, is there anyone still in the Riverside chat? Just post in chat.
Yeah, say something to us if you're still there.
Because I can't work out
It still says live recording on my screen.
Yeah, so, and I mean, if you're still hearing us, it looks like the chat. No, it looks like it's the same. So I think that's coming from.
Is that being imported from
Yeah.
from YouTube?
And I just realised I've just.